到处都是监控。每天装甲车啊，一些坦克啊，在市区里面走来走去，也没有具体的法律规定，没有它的一些尺寸。
Reporting in Xinjiang, in China's far northwest, feels like traveling in a war zone. So we're here in Urumqi, which is the capital of Xinjiang, in a market downtown. The security here is incredibly tight. There are armored cars on the street, police stations on every corner, and tons of surveillance cameras. In the past year, police have stepped up security. The region is now under what's probably the most intense government surveillance in the world. Here, China is experimenting with futuristic spying technologies. For years, China has tried to suppress a separatist movement made up of Uyghurs, a local ethnic group. Authorities say the separatists are Islamic terrorists. We came to see what life looks like in a place where your every move can be monitored. To be in Xinjiang means being checked every day, multiple times a day. When you go to a market, when you drive a car, when you take a train, even your smartphone is checked. As reporters, we were stopped dozens of times by police in just a few days. Our interviews were interrupted. We were detained and chased out of town. Daily life can be exhausting even for people who approve of the security, like this wine shop owner we met.
非常麻烦，就会给人造成一种困扰。人一旦有了困扰，他就不愿意去干这个事。对，就像我喜欢逛街，但是我一去逛街就要查个身份证的话，造成了困扰，我就不愿意上街了。
The surveillance apparatus falls hardest on Uyghurs. Parhat Imin sells pomegranate juice in the streets of Urumqi. He used to sell Islamic items, but after ethnic riots in 2009, the police forced him to close his shop.
执法就打的把我，而且土行打的，把牙打掉了，土打掉了。
Imin has had run-ins with authorities since. He was once sent to jail for buying hashish. Now, he says every time he goes through a checkpoint, his ID sets off an alarm.
撞进去了，黑名单。说这个的话，别地方去把我抓行，抓行抓走，还走了。
Imin says authorities are targeting him because he's Uyghur. The government didn't respond to requests for comment.
好几次我给弹幕说呢，哎，枪毙掉，我就不上货了。
Chinese rulers have been trying to control Xinjiang for roughly 2,000 years. The region is well positioned for controlling trade routes between Europe and Asia. It's also rich in oil, coal, and natural gas. In 1949, Mao Zedong sent his army into Xinjiang and incorporated it into the People's Republic of China. Many Uyghurs saw this as an act of colonization. Over time, riots erupted. In recent years, violent attacks by separatists have occurred inside and outside Xinjiang. To bring order, in 2016, Beijing installed a new strongman in Urumqi, Chen Quanguo, who was known for locking down Tibet, another rebellious region. In Xinjiang, Chen has taken his methods of mass control to a new level, turning the region into a laboratory for new surveillance technology. ID cards loaded with personal details are used to track people's movements. Residents have different levels of freedom based on factors like ethnicity and religious practices. Goods that are deemed dangerous are tightly controlled. If you want to buy a knife in this cutlery shop, for example, the purchase is tied to your ID, as this salesman demonstrates.
这个叫二维码，这个叫二维码编号，然后直接雕刻，能激光刻上就可以了。就是一个身份证画面上面，然后一读卡，这个叫身份证照片、身份证号码，然后民族、家庭住址都有了，然后生成一个二维码。
The system also tracks faces. An immense network of security cameras, some equipped with facial recognition, is constantly monitoring the streets. Facial recognition systems are also used to match people with their ID cards, everywhere from shopping malls to gas stations. Authorities use artificial intelligence that can alert them if someone in a video is walking too fast or parked in the wrong spot. The government has also massively increased human surveillance. It has recruited 6 times more policemen this year than it did in 2015. Cities are now dotted with brand new police booths, one every couple hundred yards in some Uyghur neighborhoods. For Tahir Hamad and his family, all of this was too much, so they fled to the U.S.
任何政权没有对维吾尔族人这么严酷、这么严厉的打击。
Hamad is a poet and a filmmaker. He arrived in August and has applied for political asylum.
要提交给移民局，就是。
To get out, Hamad bribed a doctor to make up a story. His daughter had to be treated for epilepsy in the U.S.
我一直担心，可能有新疆的警察会拦截我。
Hamad says the situation in Xinjiang took a turn for the worse in the spring this year. Police started collecting massive amounts of detail about the lives of Uyghur residents.
这个表格呢，就是发到每一个人的手里。这边有很多信息，他的民族身份，维吾尔族无业人员，有护照，每日礼拜，这是给人打分，判断这个人是放行人员，还是一般人员，还是不放行人员。
Hamad and other Uyghurs in exile say people categorized as unsafe were sent to study centers for political education. We found one of the so-called schools buried down a rural road on the outskirts of Kashgar. It was newly built and looked more like a prison, with watchtowers and walls topped with razor wire.
这是说白了，这是集中营。这个时候就通过监控来指定抓什么样的人。
The government didn't respond to our request for comment, but Hamad says many more people are being detained today than in the past.
很多人他不知道为什么被抓，不知道把他送到哪里，不知道什么时候放出来。
In Xinjiang, China's experiment with surveillance isn't just about fighting terrorism. It's also about Xi Jinping's ambitions. One of the Chinese president's signature initiatives is to develop trade routes across Eurasia, and Xinjiang is considered key to its success.
President Xi, I want to thank you.
On top of that, Western leaders are reluctant these days to publicly challenge Xi Jinping on human rights. That means one thing: the surveillance state in Xinjiang is likely to keep expanding.
也就是梦见新疆，梦见乌鲁木齐。第二天醒来呢，一看，第二天醒来以后，我们觉得是在美国，很安全。